Serious, what revenge of yours hit the victim way worse than you thought it would, to the point you said maybe I shouldn't have done that? In elementary school there was a bully kid who would make fun of me. I had a bad bowl cut and was pretty small, so it wasn't surprising. Me and my friends usually just ignored him. Anyway, one day this kid from Brazil moved into the house next to mine. He was a year older. We used to play soccer together every day after school. I mentioned to him once that this kid would call me names and usually while walking home from school would follow behind me taunting me. One day I'm leaving school and this kid is going slowly behind me on his bike shouting stuff. Just dumb kid stuff, you know. A Brazil kid comes out of nowhere, knocks the kid off his bike and just starts beating him. Bully is on the grass crying and bleeding. Brazil kid grabs the bike and gives it to me. You can keep this, and then walks away. I didn't know what to do. I just laid the bike next to the kid and walked home. He wasn't at school for like a week. Later in life I found that kid had a really crappy home situation with abusive parents. I was 10 at the time. Always felt bad for that. Quit bullying me though. I still occasionally see that Brazilian guy. Don't think he even remembers it. Cool on him for helping in his way. I just think it went too far. Brazil kid was actually pretty cool for sticking up for you. And yeah, I wouldn't feel too bad for the bully. Sometimes it has to happen to them a few times before they learn to quit taking a crappy home life out on innocent kids. I was dating this girl and my friend saw her around town a few times and humiliated her in an effort to embarrass me. I told him to stop bothering her, but he did it again. That night I convinced him to try getting back together with his wildly insane and manipulative ex that he hadn't spoken to in years, thinking that he would just humiliate himself by trying. Well, they banged and got back together for a while and had a baby. Now they are terrible single parents. Jesus. I think the consequences from this one are the worst in the thread. My friends and I used to pull a lot of pranks on each other growing up, and about 10 years ago I was helping my buddy set up a new business. He was ordering business cards and the company he was going through was offering I think 500 or so free with a large order, so we decided to prank our other friend. We made business cards with his name, phone number, home address and had his job title as professional creep with the slogan, "If I'm creepin', you ain't sleepin'." We passed these cards out all over town. He was getting really harassing phone calls for a while and couldn't figure out why. After about 2 years he found one of the cards on a random fridge at a party and put 2 and 2 together. He was P and is still getting random calls 10 years later. I feel really bad about that one. Jesus, change your number. Had a lawyer a few years back who was a piece of absolute crap. 1. Would go months between returning phone calls. 2. Constantly late with court filings to the point the courts multiple times moved to have the case dismissed from lack of action. 3. Lied to me constantly about anything and everything. 4. Refused to be fired. Seriously, when I told him he was fired he just ignored me and kept presenting himself as my lawyer. I had to get the courts involved to get him to stop. 5. Lied about me. Our client has been unreachable. We are considering dropping them. I tried to call you 84 times in THR last 3 months and you didn't answer or return a single one. 6. When I finally did fire him, he told me I had to be in court on a specific date. That didn't work for me. At a specific time. That didn't work for me. Or else the motion to withdraw wouldn't be accepted. So I got to the courtroom and the judge was super nice but confused as to why I was there, and when I told him the story the judge just goes, "Yay, this is all done electronically. I'm not sure why your lawyer would tell you that other than to be a dong." Needless to say, by the end of all this I was P and wrote a 10-page bar complaint about 4 different lawyers and their offices and ethical behavior. Well, the Bar Association decided this was a firm-wide encouraged pattern of behavior and threw the book at the 4 partners. Disbarred for 5 years, restitution to clients, and only allowed to practice under supervision for a period of 5 years after they return. I felt a little bad, but goddang I was so freaking sick of being jerked around. My brother and cousins were walking home from school. While my brother and I were walking and my cousins were on bikes, they kept circling us and making fun of us because we didn't have bikes. One of my cousins then spit on me, out of reflex. I blasted her with my trumpet case and she went flying, landed on the concrete and broke her arm. I felt awful. It was the first and last time I ever hit a girl. My family believed every word of the story, knew this cousin was always a total B to me, and largely believed she had it coming. I still felt awful though. The trumpet case, an elegant weapon for a more civilized age. When I was in 5th grade, my teacher gave out a crap ton of homework one day, so I got the whole class to help me write a letter to the principal. She found out and cried and crap. I felt really horrible because she was just trying to get us ready for a test coming up. I still feel really bad every time I think about it. Oh, I have one for this. My grandpa was a bit old school and gave me prison yard advice for my first week of school. He said, if anyone picks on you, just deal with them right then. Don't take it. First week of kindergarten. A grade 1 kid was pushing me around, not letting me go back to class. I pushed him down against a fence and kicked him in the face 3 or 4 times, splitting his nose. Almost got kicked out of school, until they found out my grandpa had told me to do it. Thing is, no one messed with me after, and that guy was nice to me all the way through to graduation. A kid on my track team would always come by and take a drink of whatever I had with me. I was sick of it and brought a root beer with me which had been spiked with 3x the recommended dose of root beer flavored X-Lax. Sure enough, he came by and I said, you know what, Tony, why don't you just take the whole thing? Well, we were having a home meet that day and he was our best pole vaulter and part of the relay team. I thought maybe he'd feel a little off and under pre-form. In the midst of our warm-ups, he went missing and was absent the entire meet. Back in my early 20s, I was working a crap job in the mall. I'd only been working there for about a month when I was promoted to key holder over a guy who started before me. The dude had been a real flake as long as I'd known him, so I wasn't surprised. Apparently he'd been promised the position and was really upset at me. For the next month he was a huge dong to me, swiping sales, complaining to the manager about me, slyly fricking up cleaning projects or displays I had done, and informing the manager that I'd failed to do something. After a full month of his bulls, I eventually snapped. At a few of the local plant nurseries you can buy jars of ladybugs for $10. I bought 3, which was somewhere between 2 and 5,000 ladybugs. I swiped his keys from the break room while I was on lunch, found his cute new Saturn, and dumped all 3 containers on the floor of his back seat. We closed together that night, so we ended up waking out to the parking lot together after dropping the cash off at the deposit box. I was parked further out, so he got to his car before I did, and I was able to get a peek at my handiwork. It looked like something from a horror film. The ladybugs had swarmed the entire inside of his car, and in the dim light you couldn't really tell what they were, only that the car was full on infested with bugs. The dude had a freaking breakdown right there in the parking lot. Just absolutely lost his mind. I enjoyed the scene at first, but the longer it went on the worse I felt. After he calmed down enough to start making sense, he barreled into this monologue about how he was sure it was the girl from the pretzel stand because he'd been such a huge butthole to her, and he starts crying. He goes on about how he deserves this for being so awful, and then apologizes to me for being such a dong, and keeps going on about how he brought this on himself. It was pretty bad. I offered him a ride home, now feeling really guilty, and when I dropped him off he thanked me for being so nice to him, despite all the awful stuff he'd done. He said his mother was undergoing cancer treatment and it wasn't going well. Oof. He apologized again and I didn't see him for a few days. Crap between us at work improved a lot, but I still felt guilty as frick. He had to sell the car a few months later because the Texas heat had killed all the ladybugs and he couldn't get the smell of them out of the vehicle. His mom died a little while after that and he ghosted the job. Frick, I still think about that dude even now. The revenge felt so righteous when I did it, but afterwards it was nothing but guilt. You also killed 2,000 ladybugs. My sister used to kick my butt on the regular. She had mad anger problems and would go berserk over the littlest things. One time I turned the light on while she was trying to sleep. She beat me up and I ended up going to prom with bruises all over me. All through the years, I never hit her back. I was a super sensitive kid and if I ever hit back, I ended up crying to my mom about how I loved my sister and hated to hurt her. After I graduated, she had calmed down a bit, but she still had issues. Coming back from a small party one night and she is back on her old bulls, just getting mad over something stupid and going totally crazy over it. We get home and get out of the car and say I'm driving home. She keeps saying I'm too drunk even though I'd only had 2-3 mini beers. She grabs the back of my shirt and I'm so pissed off at her. I turn around really fast with my fist out to hit her arm or something. She immediately lets out a blood-piercing scream and drops to the ground. Blood is spurting everywhere. She leaves a trail as she runs inside and wakes up our mom and dad. Turns out, I broke her nose pretty freaking bad. But my mom and dad kept saying it couldn't be that bad because I had done it and that she must have really been freaking with me for me to have done something like that after all these years of her beating on me. I felt so awful. I cried and tried to say sorry, but she ended up going to the hospital. I don't feel so bad now because she purposely never paid the bill, thinking she could bully me into paying it, and she never let it go. She always says I'm the reason her credit and stuff is bad and that she still has collections agencies calling her over the bill. I ain't paying that crap. Consider it payment for the years of abuse. I think I have told this before, but I think I was 15 and was in class and sat next to a friend of mine. He, for no reason, began to say, "Haha, your bald father," which I followed up with, "Haha, your bald mother." He started crying and ran to the teacher. I honestly forgot his mom had cancer and was getting chemo. Had a roommate who basically let his new GF move into our house in college. She helped herself to everything in the house but never contributed. Finally she parked in my parking spot and that was my breaking point. I let all the air out of all of her tires, thinking she'd just air them back up and it would be an inconvenience. Instead she ended up buying all new tires. Whoops, never came clean about it. Back in middle school, a friend of mine threw a small wadded piece of paper at me. I retaliated by throwing the only thing I could find, which was mud close to my shoes. Smacked him right in the face with it. Worst part is, it turned out to be dog crap that was at the bottom of my shoe. I still vividly remember his angry "WTF man, I throw paper at you and you throw dog crap?" Way back in elementary school, a friend threw a piece of chalk that hit me square in the forehead. It was the most humiliating moment for younger me as everyone who saw that started laughing their asses off. Kids are buttholes. I plotted and planned my revenge to get back in the exact same fashion over the next couple of days. One fine day, weapon in hand, I find him perfectly placed a chalk throw away from me. I yell out his name and quickly launch the projectile as he spins around. For some reason he had his mouth open as he looked at me and the piece of chalk flew directly into his throat. His eyes widen and he starts choking. I stood frozen in shock as he fell on his knees coughing. Luckily somebody grabbed him from behind and thumped his back, so he swallowed the piece. An adult walks in. Cannot remember who it was at the time, but she looks at me and asks what happened. At this point I'm shaking, realizing that I narrowly killed my friend. I say it was a mint. My friend, also shaken at this point, laughs it off saying it went straight into his throat and he didn't taste it. The adult shakes her head and says next time just hand it like a normal person and walks away. Years later when we were moving away to another country I remind him about the incident and come clean about the whole thing. He snaps and yells I knew it. When I was a kid I was at a local river, a great swimming spot lots of people came to. My friend pushes me in the river and naturally I came up spluttering and a little red in the face, but it was all in good fun. For the rest of the day I planned to get her back, waiting for my opportunity to push her in, until she was at the edge of the river drying off. I pushed her, but her flailing and the slippery nature of the rocks she was on made her slip on the spot, and instead of just splashing into the water, she landed on her back hitting the rocks hard, and then fell into the water. She was winded, but thankfully otherwise unharmed. Our parents were furious at me, and I just spent the few seconds it took to get her out. Felt like a lot longer to me, just hoping I hadn't broken her back or something. 2/10 revenge, would not do again. When I was bullied by some local kids I filled the petrol tank of their family car with grass, dirt, sticks and stones, bottle caps, pretty much anything I could jam into the petrol tank. I felt sorry for that poor car. My older brother was always quite horrible to me as a child and my parents never really did much about it. He was also much bigger than me, so I couldn't retaliate in a physical way cause I would be swiftly cripple cross-faced walls of Jericho. One day I had just had enough. My revenge. He had been playing Rome Total War for a good 6 hours a day for about 3 weeks. I started a new game and overwrote his save file. Never seen fury like it. I regretted it at the time cause he was so angry it scared me and it made him dislike me even more, but now I praise my 13-year-old self for hitting him where it clearly hurt most. He was a prick, but his choice of submission moves was excellent. IDK what it was, but a lot of the boys in my 6th grade class thought it was hilarious to try and trip people. They'd get your butt no matter how careful you were. Well, I was pretty good at avoiding it, but when I was in gym class this kid named Joey got my butt hard. I was dribbling down court and he nailed me. I face planted hard. So I thought about how to get him, and I got him at lunch. He was holding a lunch tray, so his hands weren't as useful. He nailed a table and lost a tooth. I got suspended for 10 days, and a strict no tripping policy got implemented. Immediate suspensions if caught. Crap sucked. My dad beat my butt raw. Sorry, Joey. This one is not as serious or entertaining as most of the answers you'll find here, but when we were kids, my sister threw water at me and ran away, so I picked up my glass of water and ran after her. I threw the water from the glass at her once I had her cornered. Unfortunately the glass had slipped out of my hand and it hit her right across her face. She got bruised and cut pretty bad. This one is not as serious. Literally glass someone. A neighbor lady was mean to me, so I went into the laundry room after her and crap on her clothes in the washer. I was 5. I'll let you off because you were 5, but you should have waited and shat on her clothes in the dryer. When I was in nursery, preschool, a kid used to constantly bully me, take toys off of me, etc. One day, outside in the garden, he stole a toy tractor I was riding on. He stood up on the seat and stuck his tongue out at me. Age 4 me had finally been broken. I ran and kicked the tractor, which jolted it forward. He subsequently fell off and rolled down a hill into some stingy nettles and got some pretty bad cuts and bruises. I remember thinking right then and there, wow, I really didn't need to do that, but that little part of me felt great. I was 11. My older brother was 16. We would fight and argue, but one time I was running up the stairs away from him and he whipped the back of my legs with a long rubber chew toy. It left a pretty big, figure 8 shaped welt on my legs. I knew he was faster and stronger than me, and I knew if I tried to attack him he'd stop me. So, I grabbed a flathead screwdriver and held it over the stove until it was red hot. I ran up to him and very openly went to stab him. Knowing he'd stop me, he grabbed my wrist to stop my thrust, as anticipated, and I pushed the red hot head of it into his forearm as hard as I could. Man, I was a crazy butthole as a kid. Sorry, Mike. Jesus. Co-worker and I had a friendly prank war spanning 2 years. Close to the end of our war, he iced my car. Icing involves taking the hose to the parking lot every half hour and spraying a light mist over your victim's car when it's below 0 out. I finished my 12-hour shift to find a car encased in 2 inches of ice. My revenge was, I thought, both more inconvenient for him and less freezing my balls off for me. I decided to take a bedsheet, drape it over his car, and only took 4 or 5 trips out with the hose the next night. So the next morning he finds his car with a 1/4 inch of ice freezing a sheet to his car. When he started peeling off the sheet, he pulled his windshield wipers, arms and all off of his ratty Jeep. I got a very pee-off phone call. I felt bad. The unwritten rule was embarrassing or inconvenient. No damage. I paid for repairs, and he got his revenge. He planted a dozen pieces of smoked herring throughout my car. Took me 6 months to find the last piece, hidden under the carpet under the back window of my car. I can still smell it. I don't even own the car anymore. The husband of a friend of mine was teasing me incessantly at a game night. I had finally had enough and snapped at him, "You must not have had a very good mother." Turns out he was adopted. Nothing to feel sorry about here in my opinion. Sounds like this guy didn't really know what teasing was and instead was just kind of bullying you. Teasing requires for things to be fun and playful, not legitimately annoying. Sure, it was unintentionally close to home, but sometimes people have to learn that if you're going to tease people, they're going to shoot back. Had a neighbor yell at my younger brother about his weight and I took it extra personal. Didn't know how to get him back without getting caught. Then I figured out I could place nails just under the back of the tire so when he pulled out of the driveway he'd run over them. Turns out he was super poor and couldn't afford the repairs. My dad had to carpool with him to work for a month or so. I've never told anyone. Drunk guy came at me on my porch. I was in college. It was welcome week. Kid was all kinds of fricked up. Tried to get him to leave and finally he came up on my porch and swung. I ducked him and shoved him away. He was too drunk. Couldn't keep his balance and bounce his face off the curb. Blood, teeth, it was brutal. I was afraid he was really hurt, but he came to pretty quickly. He ended up getting arrested before it was all said and done. He definitely did that to himself. My dad left a passive-aggressive note. I drew a dong on the note. He hasn't spoken to me for 2 weeks. Used to feel bad but I'm over it. Passive-aggressiveness beaten with passive-aggressiveness. Great. When I was little my friends kept pointing at the little girl on the box of the board game Operation and saying it looks like me. So I pointed at the big fat guy and said that's your mom and didn't realize she was behind me. Okay, so I got a prank call. Dude abusing me and constantly ringing me, so I set up a fake account on a dating website with pics of a cute girl and put his number in the profile description. Should have put it in the M4M personal section of the classifieds. Some girl hit my car in a hit and run. There was a witness to the crime, so the police were able to track her down. When I was asked if I wanted to press charges I went for it. Turns out she had no license or insurance. She kept trying to fight the charges but wound up getting sued by my insurance, having to pay me restitution via the court system, and 4 separate charges between all her crimes, all of which included a decent fine. She was some 18-year-old single mom. I felt super bad by the end of it. 2 days ago, actually, in my football I know, game this one clumsy defender kept catching my ankles seconds after I would pass the ball away. So one play he was clearing the ball and I just wanted to lay the kid out. As he was on his plant foot swinging I hit him with my shoulder hard and as he was falling he grabbed me and took me down with him. I landed on his arm and it snapped like a twig between the wrist and the elbow. I feel awful. Clumsy defender. Unless he was genuinely apologizing after each foul, I would assume it was intentional. As he was falling he grabbed me and took me down with him. B move. Caused his own arm to break. When I was in 9th grade a kid ruthlessly bullied me for a few months. I had gotten sick of it and devised a plan for revenge. Every Wednesday we would get to sit outside for quiet reading time and this kid would always go back inside for a pee. I had left and waited in the bathroom for him, peeking under the stall for his shoes to appear. He came in the bathroom, took his pee, then played on his Game Boy for the rest of reading time. The bell rang and he walked out to the crowded stairwell still looking down at his Game Boy. I bumped into him. He fell face first down the stairs, knocked out 4 front teeth. Everyone on the stairs assumed he fell because he was playing his Game Boy. I feel pretty bad about it. If you are new to the channel, you can subscribe. I publish new videos every day. Until then, check another video. Bye for now.